Hello and welcome to Melee's Turn Wheel, the series that takes a retroactive look at the Fire Emblem series chapter by chapter. I'm your host, I'm Melee Kirby, and today we're taking it back to chapter 7X, 8, 9, and 10 of Fire Emblem, The Blazing Blade. Get another episode out before the end of the year. I might honestly have time to do two more main episodes, but we'll have to see. The next SS episode, that fucking every goddamn time. The next SSS episode is not going to be out for quite a while. At least, maybe like 3 or 4 more main episodes. I don't remember exactly when, but we'll get there when we get there. We're going to be in for just a few main episodes for a while, though. In the meantime, we're gonna be talking about wrapping up Lin Mode today. That's exciting. But before that, I am going to read off the answers that I got to last episode's question, which was basically, who do you ship Lin with? Essentially, is kind of the was kind of the idea. Only got 2 responses to this one. At Ufel says Lin and Wrath, mostly because Lin being Sue's mother seems cute, which is valid. I like that as well. I think Sue is canonically Wrath's daughter. I don't know if I've ever mentioned this across either game, but Wrath doesn't have a lot of pairing options in this game. In fact, it might literally just be Lin. So I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe Wrath is like the closest thing we have to canon. I'm pretty sure Hector is meant to be the canon one, but whatever. And then so I only got one real answer. At Superuser Person said chapter 17E/18H. Sorry, someone legally had to make this joke. Now, if you don't get that, that is the chapter of this game where you are playing on a boat, aka a ship. Haha, very funny. I'm gonna put that up on the fridge next to all the Sigurd burning alive jokes, Sigurd barbecue jokes. That one, okay. No, to be fair, Soup's joke was a little bit more original than those. I'll give him that. But yeah. So yeah, I like Florina. I've mentioned this. I did also mention this. I like basically all of them. I think they're all nice relationships for Lin. But if I had to pick a favorite, it would probably be Florina. Hector is also pretty good. Hector is like a close second to me, I think. But Florina's pretty good as well, and I like that. Okay. The question for this episode is going to be... Okay, I got it. So for reasons that will become obvious a little bit later in the episode, today's question is going to be, what is your least favorite single gameplay mechanic in the entire series? If you had to pick just one to completely remove from the series, never to be seen again, what would it be and why? It can be Fog of War. It can be something that's occurred across multiple games. It could be specifically one game. You'll know by the end of this episode what my choice is, and I think a lot of people would probably also choose this. I think a lot of people would choose this one also. The only reason they might not is if they forget that it exists, which is fair because it only exists in this game. And a lot of you probably already have a pretty good idea of what I'm talking about at this point, but I won't spoil it. Let's save that for later. All right. So yeah, leave your answers at I'm in Melee Kirby or turnwheelpodcast@gmail.com. Okay. So without further ado, I did want to talk about something actually. So last time I was really fucking off my game, apparently, because I had what's the word? I hadn't made an episode in so long. It had been like several months. So I was really off my game yesterday, or the last time I uploaded the episode. So I completely forgot not only to do the map gauntlet at the end, which we'll do. I guess we might as well do that now. But the other thing that I forgot to do is I didn't put the map theme music in there at first. I did fix it later. If you listened to the episode within the first couple of days it was out, then you would have noticed that it did not have the map theme play. After the intro to every episode, I always say, we'll start with chapter whatever, and then I'll play some map theme from the game. I just did not put one in last episode until a couple days later when I remembered and fixed it, and now it should be fine. But yeah, if you noticed that and thought, hey, that's weird, I literally just forgot. the more recent episodes, I don't know. I've had this microphone that I've been using for quite a while. I don't know if it's like a new thing or maybe it's my new setup. I don't know what it is, but for whatever reason, I feel like more often than before, I am moving around and it's causing the microphone, like the volume of the audio, to be really inconsistent, which is not good. Obviously, very poor podcasting etiquette. So I'm trying to work on that. I am looking into getting a different mic, like one that can be on my headphones. Because I have ADHD, so it's just kind of inevitable that I'm going to move around and fidget, which is going to not only make the volume inconsistent, but is also going to add some background noise. So I'm trying to minimize that, but it's basically impossible for me to stop. I have really, really significant ADHD. But I thought maybe, I can get a mic that hooks up to my headphones, and then, no matter where I am, the volume will always be consistent. But I feel like there's no middle ground for headphones with microphones. They're either like $30, which I don't, I'd rather spend a little bit more than that because I feel like the audio quality on that is not going to be very good. Or they're like $300, which I am absolutely not willing to spend. I think my cap would probably be like $100. So if anyone has any good suggestions for that, tweet at I'm Kirby or let me know through some other way, because I would like to, get some nice, The audio quality of the headphones I really do not care about. It's really just the microphone, but I can't imagine that they would make a headset that prioritizes the microphone over the audio, so I'm assuming that that's going to be, it's going to correlate. So whatever. If you have any ideas in your experience, if you have like good quality microphones, headsets, let me know. I'm curious to see what's out there. But all right. Without further ado, let's quickly do the map gauntlet from last time before we get started with this episode's map. So last time we played, what did we play? We played 4, 5, 6, and 7. Some pretty decent maps in that one in terms of like teaching tutorials. None of them were good, obviously. Like none of them were great. I guess we can immediately rule out chapter 5 because that map sucked. It was literally just like a forest with, a straight line. It was really, really boring. 4, I remember honestly really liking, from that perspective of like, it kind of diegetically teaches you how to, split your army in a way that's going to like give you the best possible odds, with Will over on the left, and Sane and Kent down defending the front door, and Lynn over, or Florina over going to fight the mercenaries. Like that felt like a nice teaching moment that the game didn't shove on you. It let you figure that out for yourself by asking you to remember things like the weapon triangle and how archers work. So yeah, I thought that was cool. Nothing crazy, obviously, but it's nice. Chapter 6 is just kind of okay, and chapter 7 is not really anything to write home about either. I honestly, like, for as simple as it is, like, I honestly think it might be chapter 4, and versus chapter 3. Chapter 3 and chapter 4 are very similar in that regard, because they kind of diegetically teach you things about the game. I mean, it's not really gonna matter because neither of these are gonna hold up to some of like the mid or late game maps when they actually start to get fun. For the most part, not always, but several of them are quite fun. So yeah, 3 versus 4 though is an interesting question. I think I'm gonna give it to 3 actually. I think 3 is still my favorite in the game so far, just because not counting the ones that we're gonna talk about today. At least we'll get there when we come to it. But just because I think flying around with Florina is a lot of fun. I think choke points are really fun. And chapter 4 has less of that. But both of them are pretty good about like, giving you some teaching moments in there. But yeah, chapter 3, still not, the best map of all time or anything like that. But for an early game Fire Emblem map, I appreciate the level of thought that went into it without like it was clearly meant to be easy and still very much a tutorial map, but you can tell that they put some thought into like how to actually do that, which, compared to like the early game of 5 and 6, which are basically just like normal maps, like that's not bad necessarily, but if you're gonna do some kind of like tutorial teaching device thing, then I think that's the way to do it, and I think that they did a good job. So Nothing great. Still haven't really gotten to the good maps yet. And spoilers, that doesn't change this episode either, really. But we're getting there. We're getting there. All right. Without further ado, now that I've gotten everything else out of the way, let's go ahead and start with our chapters for the episode, starting with Chapter 7X, The Black Shadow. We get an enemy POV. If you remember, at the end of the last episode, we were helping two young people, young guys, children. Wow. What the fuck is wrong with me today? Took me like 3 tries to figure out the word for children. We were helping a couple of children escape pursuit from an organization known as the Black Fang. And we did. We successfully fought off the Black Fang and helped the 2 children. And we were going to be on our merry way. But then Ninian said, oh, no, my bracelet's missing. And Lynn and Mark were like, oh, we'll go help you get that back. And now we're here in Chapter 7X. It seems like the Black Fang is getting talked to by one of their superiors. A mysterious woman who looks important because she has like a unique portrait. But, we'll get back to her at a later time. But basically, she just says, don't fuck up again. It's very lucky for you that they're coming back this way. Because if they weren't, then I would just kill you right now. But I'll give you another chance. If you don't succeed this time, then I'm just going to kill you. And they say, yep, okay. Basically, there's a very funny scene here where Ninian and Nils are both just like, Lynn, seriously, it's just the bracelet. Like, it's important to us. Don't get us wrong. But it's just the bracelet. You really don't have to do this. It's not that big of a deal. And then's like, don't worry. Mark knows what we're capable of, and if he doesn't think that we could win, then he wouldn't have asked us to come. And so she's putting a lot of faith in you. Honestly, you have no idea what these guys are capable of. And in fact, later on, you fight many more of these guys that are way stronger than you are at this point in the game. So it's lucky that they got the fucking scrub squad on this one for this chapter, or else we'd never be able to beat them. Okay, so yeah, that's basically it. It's either a route or a kill boss. I don't know. The boss is at the far back, and the enemies aren't all that strong, so it's easy to just route it on your way to the boss anyway. You don't really have to go out of your way for that. There's a couple different ways you can go. You can split your army down the middle, which I kind of like. There's a few different pathways to go. There's a room where you can like throw stuff or javelins or bows or magic over the walls. There's a room over on the left that has a chest that you have to kind of hurry to because there's a thief on his way to get it, which is cool. This is the first time that we're seeing, not last chapter, but chapter 6 was the first time that we were seeing chests at all. And then now we're seeing like, sometimes you're going to have to hurry to get to the chest or else someone's going to steal the treasure from you. Relatively easy to get there without too much of a problem. Although, honestly, the thief is pretty quick. So if you're just like, if you're new or whatever and you're taking your time and, making sure to be thorough, then honestly, the thief might actually get there before you do. You do actually have to, like, try a little bit. Not to overstate it. It's still quite easy, but, you have to try a little bit. But yeah, so you get the chest. I don't even remember what's fucking in it. I think it's like a elixir or something like that. I don't know. Pretty straightforward map otherwise, though. It's not really that big of a deal. You just make it to the end, you kill the boss. Really, really easy. I was hoping that they would amp up the difficulty a little bit for this one, just because, like, in order to make it here, you have to have beaten the last chapter in 15 turns, which, while not hard, is, like, requires some level of skill. Like, when I was playing this game for the first time, I was like turtling the map. I was, playing super slow, so I didn't get this guidance chapter. If you manage to beat the last chapter in under 15 turns, that shows some level of ability to play through the game fast. Relatively speaking, at least, and make winning a priority. So I kind of was hoping that they would bump up the difficulty a little bit, since there's a filter, that anybody who got here is like probably at least okay at the game. But no, they keep it basically the same as all the rest of the Lin mode maps, which is unfortunate. After you win, you defeat the boss. You don't actually kill him. You know, defeat him in battle, and you're like, all right, we'll let you go, but you gotta give us information or whatever. And then the guy just kills himself. He eats some poison and dies. And then there's this kind of like unsettling moment where someone, I think it's Kent, is like, this guy is not just a regular fucking bandit. This is like a trained organization. And Lin is like, why are they after Ninian and Nils then? Like, that's, you know, that's very unnerving. But Lin doesn't let this bother her too much, and she goes and comforts Ninian and Nils. She does get back Nina's Grace. I think that's how you're supposed to say it. It's the bracelet that Ninian lost. Unfortunately, we cannot use it in Lin mode. I honestly, like, I don't know why this fucking chapter exists. Like, just give us something. Let us use Nina's Grace for the rest of Lin mode. Why not? You know, like, it's not like Lin mode is very hard. Like, why do you need to not give it to us? Unfortunately, Nina's Grace is only available in Eliwood and Hector mode, and I'm pretty sure you get it regardless of if you go to this Gaiden chapter. So, like, literally, what is even the point of this? I genuinely don't know, other than giving us more Black Fang content, and then whatever you get in that chest, which I don't even remember what it is. So, just doesn't seem all that worth it to me. This isn't a requirement for, like, going to 19XX, I don't think. So it's just an extra map and a little bit more experience. It is nice if you want to promote Kent or Sane. It gives you more experience to work with for them, I guess. So that's pretty good. All right, next up, we have Chapter 8, which is called Vortex of Strategy. They are now back on their way to Caelin, but Lundgren is busting out the big guns at this point. And at the beginning of the chapter, in the cutscene, Lin is almost killed by a Ballistae. Ballistae, yeah. I used to think it was pronounced Ballista, but apparently it's Ballistae. As per Fire Emblem Warriors, which I'll be talking about that later, actually, excitingly. But yeah, it's pronounced Ballistae, apparently, and Lin is almost skewered by one, and they're like, all right, Lundgren isn't fucking around anymore. He really does not want you to get to Caelin, so he is doing everything he can to stop you. Lin is like, whatever, it's not gonna stop me, I'm still gonna go fight these guys. But in the battle preps for this chapter, Matthew says that he's going to be unavailable. This is like basically the first and only time that the game or the series really does this. I mean, certainly, you know, there are games and chapters where certain characters will be unavailable for whatever reason. But for them to like go into the preps menu and be like, by the way, I'm not going to be available. So just like as a heads up, that's not common. Usually they kind of just like take them away from you, like in FE4 with like Deirdre or Julia. But, you know, whatever. I'm not complaining. It's just a nice little touch, I guess. So you can get all of his stuff off of him if you actually care about anything that he has. But he will not be usable in this chapter. So the idea behind this map is that you're supposed to go down and cross a bridge, and then there are the ballista kind of around a corner there where you can grab him and kill him. And you can actually use the ballista for yourself. They ask Will if he can use the ballista, and he says, yeah, I guess, probably. I never tried, but I don't see why not. So if you can manage to kill the ballistician, you can use the ballistae for yourself, as long as, you know, Will is still around, I guess. There's also a house on the top right that's going to be targeted by bandits, which I think is the first time that has happened. I don't think bandits have gone after houses I mean, I don't think bandits could have gone after houses in any of the other maps. They either don't have houses or they don't have bandits, or they're chapter 3 where you're just going to get the house immediately. So it doesn't matter. Oh, actually, you know what? No. If you don't get the one in the top of chapter 3, then the bandit will go for it, I think. Yeah, okay. That's fair. But yeah, so there are bandits going for this village. The village inside has a Lance Reaver, which basically it explains the concept of Lance Reavers, which I think they were in. Yeah, they were definitely in FE6. But they're cool weapons that like reverse the weapon triangle. But not only do they reverse the weapon triangle, they also like boost its effects. So like if you're using like an axe, against Lance, you get certain benefits. But if you're using an Axe Reaver against an Axe, then not only are the effects reversed, the Lance is strong against the Axe, but also you get more bonuses than you would if it was, being used against a sword. So that's pretty cool. I like Reaver weapons quite a bit. And it's honestly one of my biggest disappointments for the weapon triangle being removed. Not that the weapon triangle is like perfect or that it always like makes a huge amount of difference, but it removes the opportunity for things like Reaver weapons and skills that are based around the weapon triangle that I think are a little bit disappointing. I got my first game over on this map. I overextended. I got some really bullshit RNG if I can be frank. But I did overextend, which was the bigger problem. And I lost Lyn. Lyn got hit by one too many lances, and she fucking died. So rip Lyn. First of probably a handful of resets over the course of this game. The game isn't particularly hard, so I don't think that I'm going to be resetting that often, especially like in the early game, maybe a little bit later towards the end. I'm not using save states, so I can only reset if like a character dies. But yeah, other than that, the map is pretty straightforward. The ballista is, so here's the thing, right? Like they say, Florina, don't fly. In fact, I think they kind of intend for you to not deploy Florina, if anything, because if she gets hit by the ballista, she's going to take a lot of damage because she's weak to arrows. But in the English version of this game, it doesn't fucking matter because she's gonna survive a hit anyway. They're only 2 times effective. It's really not that big of a deal. And then she can just go up, and if you've been giving her kills and levels, and she's been getting decent level ups, she can probably just fucking kill him. And then you can take the ballista for yourself. I had a moment. I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. I think this is in like chapter 10, but I had a moment later in this episode where I had Florina fighting an archer, and I just wanted to see how much damage he did, and he didn't one-shot her, and I literally had to like go and double check the numbers to make sure that I had the patch installed correctly. But yeah, no, I did. It had 3 times effectiveness. He just had that little strength, and to be fair, my Florina is a little bit defense blessed. But he was just doing so little damage because he fucking sucks and is weak, and this game is piss easy. God, I prefer it when the characters I prefer it when the effective weapons are actually useful, but I'll save that rant for another time, maybe. Lyn's Manicotti, I shouldn't have even doubted it, because Lyn's Manicotti is fucking eating through paladins and cavaliers and armor knights like it's nobody's business. She like 2-shot Lundgren, at the end of this. So, I'm certainly not complaining. I just think the bow's doing so little damage is a little weird. At the end of this chapter, going back to chapter 8 now, at the end of this chapter, Kent and Sane are a little bit disheartened, just because, like, they knew a lot of these guys. Like, Lundgren is sending Kaelin soldiers to fight Lyn now at this point, not just bandits, or not just, like, hired thugs or assassins. These are soldiers of Kaelin. And they, Kent and Sane are like, I knew some of these guys. I trained with some of these guys, and they, they're feeling a little bit down about that. To shed some light on the situation, Matthew actually returns. He was off. The reason you couldn't deploy him this chapter is because he was off gathering some information for everybody. And it turns out that there are a couple things. So first of all, rumors are saying that Lundgren is poisoning Marcus Kaelin, Housen, I think is his name. And I mean, we already knew that, but now Lyn does as well. So it adds an extra sense of urgency. Like, this is not just illness that you're racing against here. Like, Lundgren is literally killing Housen. You need to hurry up. And but the other thing, and probably the more relevant thing, is that basically Lundgren has pivoted to a new strategy. He is now saying that Lyn is an imposter. He is saying that Lyn is pretending to be the daughter of Madeline, and that she is trying to take the throne for herself. And that's kind of why, like, he's petitioning, like, that's how he's getting the soldiers in on this. It sounds like he might be petitioning. They don't make this explicit, but they're worried, I think, that they're gonna get help from other territories to, like, stop this from happening. and that is, that would be awful. They can do all right against Kaylin, but if like other areas get in on the fight, then then this isn't exactly going to go well for Lyn. So they're like, what do we do? What do we do about this? And Lyn says, okay, well, we can go try to talk to Eliwood. Eliwood, at the end of last chapter, I don't remember if I mentioned this, but Eliwood was like, yeah, I did mention this. Yeah, he's like, do you need any help? And Lyn is like, no, I need to do this on my own. And Eliwood's like, okay. And now she's like, well, I can go back and see if he's still willing to help me, because this has kind of gotten out of hand. And now it's not just about my territory anymore. So I really need to ask him for help. And that's how the chapter ends. We'll just go straight into the next one because it's pretty much a direct follow-up. Chapter 9 is called A Grim Reunion, and it starts with Lyn essentially asking Eliwood for help. Eliwood has convinced all of the neighboring territories of Kaylin to stay out of the conflict, basically. That is his contribution to this. Lyn no longer has to worry about places like Laos or Santaruz or any of those places getting involved. They are not going to help her, but they are going to remain completely neutral. And unfortunately, Faerie is included in that list of territories. And Faerie, is where Eliwood is from. So Eliwood says, I'm sorry, but now I can't directly help you either. And Lyn says, that's fine. You've already done more than enough. Thank you. And that's how they split off, basically. So Lyn's in a little bit of a better position, and they're making it closer to Kaylin. In order to get to Kaylin, they have like one more major obstacle, basically, which is a guy by the name of General Eagler, who is kind of guarding the passage to the south, which is the fastest way to Kaylin. There's also apparently a thick fog that's going to be rolling in, so they need to find some way to deal with that. Overall, just kind of not a great situation to be in, but they're getting very close. They're so close they can almost taste it. All right, before the chapter starts, we get one last recruitable character. This is the last recruitable character for Lyn mode. I actually forgot to write down to talk about him, but I will do that right now. His name is Wallace. So Wallace shows up, and Sane and Kent both recognize him. They're like, oh, you're Wallace. He was a part of Kaylin's military. He was a Kaylin knight, and he retired, essentially. He's now tilling fields. He is a farmer, but he was basically drafted by Lundgren. He says, Lundgren came to me and said that I needed to help out again. And he basically says, I will fight you. He's like, I want to see Lyn, basically. I want to see the person who is claiming to be Madeline's daughter. And they're like, no, what are you going to do to her? And Wallace says, well, if I don't think that she's on the level, I'm going to take her, and I'm going to fight you guys. And they kind of get into an argument about that. But Lyn basically says, shut up. Everyone shut the fuck up. Fine. You can look at me. What do you want? And Wallace says, all right, I'm going to fight for you. Because he says, like, her eyes have, like, honesty in them or something like that. It's some bullshit reason. Wallace is fucking awesome. I love Wallace as a character. He's so funny. He kind of just like does whatever the fuck he wants, and I respect the hell out of that. So yeah, he says that he is going to fight alongside Lyn because he does believe her story now that she is actually Madeline's daughter. So Wallace joins, and that's how the chapter begins. Wallace is an armor knight, which is very, very unfortunate. Now this game actually does have another armor knight, who, especially if you're playing casually, is like really, really fucking good. Probably the best an Armor Knight has ever been, especially in terms of like casual players. There may be a couple of exceptions, but like Oswin is his name, is very, very up there for like if you're just playing through this game casually. He's so strong in the early game. Wallace kind of fits a similar deal. He has really high defense, like much higher than anybody else is going to be at this point. And in the normal mode version of this game, he joins with the Knight Crest that you are forced to use on him and promote him into a general who can now use axes. So he is certainly strong. Unfortunately, Armor Knights only have 4 movement. Generals only have 5 movement compared to the 6 movement that most other promoted classes have. Which is not really a big deal in Lyn mode because you're not going to be promoting anybody else in Lyn mode, especially on normal mode. But if you're playing on hard mode, then you are probably going to promote Sane or Kent instead of him. So he's going to be stuck at 4 move. And then, of course, Lyn mode is not all that matters. He's only around for 2 chapters of Lyn mode. So what's he like when he rejoins in Eliwood and Hector mode? And unfortunately, for some reason, they decided to have him rejoin like halfway through the game, and his stats are terrible. He's really bad. Honestly, it's very hard to even recruit him because he joins in the middle of a bunch of enemies, and his stats aren't very good. So like, if you don't hurry your ass up to him, he just fucking dies. So like, I mean, it's not great. It's not looking great for him. Even if you do promote him, though, if you don't promote him, then it's like really hard to recruit him. If you do, then it can be a little easier, but it's still not really like, I wouldn't recommend it, honestly. So yeah, Wallace kind of sucks, but he's a fun character, and I can't wait to get to his special support section episode. Chapter 9 is okay. It is a Fog of War map, which is never fun, but they give you, it's a nice learning opportunity. You can use, you get a torch in the village. Matthew teaches you about thieves being able to see through fog. It's all that good stuff. There are a shitload of enemies on this map compared to most other Lyn mode maps. They mostly like spawn as reinforcements, so they're not all on the field at once, which makes them a little bit less overwhelming to deal with. But it still gives you plenty of opportunity to farm experience for characters like Kent and Sane, Florina, Lyn if you want to use her. Yeah, it's overall, I would say it's honestly pretty fun. I mean, the Fog of War doesn't really mean anything. All the fucking enemies are so weak that if you're leading the charge with anybody who's like halfway decent at fighting, you're gonna be fine. It's really not that big of a deal. The worst you have to deal with, I think, is like there's like an archer that might kill Florina if you're not careful. But yeah, not really anything significant. Oh, I didn't really talk about the Nightcrest. I've talked about this pretty extensively already, but basically Wallace joins with the Nightcrest. On hard mode, you can give it to either Kent or Sane and promote them. Most people choose Sane because he's the better of the 2 Cavaliers overall. This playthrough, I ended up going with Kent. Although we'll see. We'll see how that pans out. I mean, I do plan on using Kent. We'll talk a little bit more about this later. But Kent is he's promoted now, and I'm really looking forward to using him because I always enjoy using the paladin that I promote in Lyn mode, which again, I usually kind of split half and half between Kent and Sane. I use different ones on different playthroughs. So, okay. The chapter is pretty basic. We get some flavor dialogue here about how Eagler is like the guy that we're fighting this chapter. He's like a pretty good guy. He's like not really scummy. So they're like, there must be something going on here where Lundgren is like holding someone that he cares about hostage or whatever. They bring it up a couple times, not only like in the chapter dialogue, I think at the end, but also like there's a house where someone says like Eagler is like a cool dude, so he wouldn't be doing this unless Lundgren basically had leverage on him. So the impression that you're supposed to get is that this is kind of a tragedy. England does not England what? Eagler does not want to actually be doing this. I wouldn't say I'm hungover. I did have a little bit to drink last night, but it's noon, so I'm not like, I hope I'm not hungover. I probably could do with some water, but I'm a little tired. So, oh yeah, we're getting to the part in the story where Wallace too, yeah, but I meant to say Kent and Sane have like dialogue with the bosses. They have dialogue with Eagler here, Kent and Sane, and also Wallace does as well. Not next chapter though, which is pretty weird. But yeah, the dialogue here is pretty good. I like that Sane and Kent have like more of a role in the story compared to what they get later, which is unfortunate that they kind of get sidelined. But yeah, I mean, I just like unique boss conversations in general, which you guys are gonna hear me talk a lot about in when I get to the games I played this year episode, because there's one particular game that had that shit in abundance, and I'm very excited to talk about it. But we'll get there when we get there. Yeah, that's all basically. This chapter is pretty straightforward. And you kill Eagler, you capture the throne, and now you are fully clear to just move on to Kalen. the last obstacle in your path is Lundgren himself. So I don't see any reason why we can't just move right on to Chapter 10, which is called The Distant Plains. This is it. We made it. Lundgren is here, and he's our last obstacle we have to fight before Caelin, or before Lyn is officially home in Caelin. In order to get to him, we have to go around like a big mountain, basically, and circle back around to Caelin. Overall, not too noteworthy of a map, just in terms of its layout. In fact, the beginning of the map is pretty boring, I would say. You do get an energy ring in this map, which you can give to someone. I gave it to Florina, because I do plan on using Florina. But yeah, overall, not too noteworthy of a map. However, there is one new mechanic that is introduced in this map and comes back several maps in this game, and it is my least favorite gameplay mechanic in this entire fucking series. And that is, of course, the weather in FE7. The rain, the snow, whatever. There are a few maps where it'll randomly start raining for a few turns, and during that period of rain, the characters will be very immobile. Most characters will only have 2 squares of movement. Actually, no. Horses only have 2 squares of movement. And I think footlocked units have either 2 or 3. Nomads actually have 3 for sure, which is, well, I mean, it's just Wrath, but it's nice because it makes sense because they're what is it? What's the like? The horses on the plains are more used to like rougher terrain, so they're able to move more liberally. But so that's a nice piece of flavor. But overall, like this mechanic, it's I don't really have a lot to say about it. For it being my favorite or my least favorite mechanic in the entire series, I really don't have much to say about it. It's pretty self-evidently awful. I think I don't need to like go into a whole bunch of explanation about it. It just slows you down and offers basically no interesting strategic angle to compensate for that. I mean, the best you can say is that it forces you to move to like play defensively for a bit, but there are other ways that you can do that. And I mean, not really either, because the enemy is also affected by the rain. So it's not like suddenly you have very low mobility and they have high mobility. That could be interesting, because then you have to like, they kind of set the pace of the map and you kind of have to meet with them. But no, it's just everybody gets slow movement for a while and can't do anything, which is fucking weird. I don't get why they did this, but it is what it is. It's obnoxious. I hate it. Thankfully, it's only in a couple maps. It's in this one. It's in chapter 14, I think. It's in one of the snowy ones, and then honestly, that might be it. I feel like I'm forgetting one or two, but overall, not too bad, fortunately. There's an armory here. I honestly really like this, just for flavor. So there's an armory in this map, and it sells like armor slayers, heavy lances, and hammers, and all that stuff to use against Lundgren, basically. Which, for a gameplay perspective, obvious why they would do that. Because I didn't mention this, but Lundgren is a general, so he's an armor unit. However, you don't really think about it. It just makes perfect sense from a gameplay perspective why they would be there. But if you actually like go to the houses and read the dialogue, they're like, "We fucking hate Lundgren so much. My dad runs an armory. Please go buy weapons to kill Lundgren. we are begging you, please." It'd be really funny if you like specifically on this map, you had like a discount, but it doesn't work that way. You have to set the prices individually, like for the item, not for like per shop. So unfortunately, they couldn't do that. I mean, I guess they could have just programmed in a second, one of each of these weapons that was only ever used in this armory that is cheaper. That could be cool, but they didn't do that. So understandable. It just would have been like a fun little detail. Lundgren is pretty easy, especially if you are me and you have the 3x patch installed. Lyn's Manikadi cuts through him like butter. In fact, actually, I think he's really the only one so far that she hasn't just 2-shot. The only like horseback person or armor knight that she hasn't just 2-shot. She 3-shots him and also has a high chance to crit. So it's still, it's still fine. You're still gonna kill him. But I just thought that was funny. And yeah, Lundgren is down for the count. And Lyn mode is over, essentially, once you capture the throne. I did... Fun thing about this map is that if you take too long, and when I say too long, this is like a very, 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 very long time. Like, I gotta say, it's gotta be close to like 50 turns, which you should never, ever... It should never take you that long. Unless you're like meticulously feeding kills to like milking every last drop of experience that you can get out of this entire map. Which sometimes you might want to do, I guess, if you're really like, really want to get like Will to level 20 or something like that. That's basically the only reason I can see this happening. Yeah. But so yeah, sorry. If you do that, if you take that long on this map, then you are stuck in the rain. The rain does not stop after a certain point, which is so annoying. I wish they flipped it the other way so that like if you take too long, the rain just like stops entirely and like doesn't come back. But no, it doesn't do that, sadly. I'm gonna turn my my microphone down because I'm peaking a lot. I can never... Well, now it's way too fucking quiet. This is intentionally inconsistent audio quality. Inconsistent audio volume. I'm literally manipulating the fucking dial. Alright, hold on, I gotta check this. Alright, it sounds fine now. I just like I laugh and it peaks, and I'm always fiddling with the audio settings that I probably don't need to bother with, but whatever. Lundgren has some really good dialogue with Kent and Sane. Not Wallace, which is weird, but Kent and Sane. And Lyn, obviously. They have really, really good dialogue. If you've never seen the dialogue with them, you should go back and see if you can get that dialogue, because it's really cool. But after you beat Lundgren, you seize the castle, and Lyn mode is over. Lyn enters the castle and finds her grandfather. And the scene that unfolds here is honestly so sweet and one of my favorite moments in the entire game. The two of them just talk. The Marquess is glad to see his granddaughter. The one time he just wanted to see her one time before he died. And the two of them have this like really nice emotional moment. Where he's like, I heard what happened to your parents. If I had been okay with their marriage, they wouldn't have had to leave the castle and they wouldn't have been attacked by bandits. And Lyn says, I mean, we lived a really happy life up until the end. So, don't feel too bad about that. And clearly he's moved on from being an asshole about it. So, they just have this nice moment together. And then he's like, all right, well, now that I've seen you, I can finally die. I've been holding out this long just so that I could see you. But now it's, I can't hold out any longer. But Lyn says, absolutely fucking not. We are going to live together. We're going to be a granddaughter and grandfather and enjoy each other's company. And we're going to spend time together. We're going to make up for all those years that we weren't able to be around each other. And Housen essentially says, okay, when you put it like that, I guess I can't just keel over and die. And like a miracle, he is completely fine. Not like immediately, he still recovers a little bit slowly, but now that the poison has stopped, he's really, still clinging on for life. And it seems like he's quickly, making a relatively fast recovery. Overall, really nice story, really nice note to end the story on. I think it would have been, I don't know whether I would have preferred it if he had died. I think it's fine to have it like this. I mean, I'm not, it's not a very realistic ending, but it's a nice ending. And I think it works for Lyn. I think it's way more satisfying for Lyn to actually like get something out of all of this rather than being, just, putting through all this effort just to see her grandfather for 5 minutes before he dies. I think it's nice the way it is, even if it's a bit contrived. So with that, Lyn mode is over, and everybody kind of goes their separate ways. Sarah goes to Ostia, where she was being escorted by Erk in the first place. Erk returns to Etruria, which is where he's from. Everybody, Dorcas, settles down with his wife again. Everybody just kind of just like has Will and Florina are staying with Sane and Kent and Lyn and Kaelin. Overall, everyone is just having a good time. Everyone turned out okay. Wrath disappeared in the middle of the night, didn't tell anybody. Lynn has this really nice goodbye moment with Mark, where, I mean, I hesitate to say really nice. I wish Mark was a character. It would be cool if he was actually a character, and then maybe I would feel a little bit more invested in like Lynn's friendship with Mark. But as it stands, it's still nice, I guess. But it feels so one sided that I don't really get it. But it is what it is. It's still nice. We get all the character endings. We see all the classic, defeats. How many enemies you killed, how many times you got killed. Only one L for me in Lynn mode, and it was when I mentioned earlier that Lynn got killed, and I had to reset. It does keep track of your resets, so if anyone else had died, it would have said that however many losses. As the credits for Lynn mode play, there are some CGs that play. Pretty much all of them were ones that we saw in the game at one point. However, one of them is a bit strange. It's just a CG of it looks to be like Urk, Sarah, and Dorcas, and I think there's someone else. I don't remember. Here, let me see if I can find the CG. Yeah, Urk and Dorcas fight bandits. And Lynn is also there, yeah. So this appears in the credits of Lynn mode, but it just doesn't show up anywhere else. All the other ones are places or ones that we saw in the game, like as it stands. But that one, for some reason, they just didn't include. I don't know what the thought process behind that one was, but whatever. All right. With that, Lynn mode is over. So this was my second Fire Emblem game. I had played FE8 before this, Sacred Stones. I'd played that before I played this game, and I wasn't really sure what to expect. I wasn't sure how FE8 compared to the rest of the series. I know now that it's one of the shorter games, even accounting for the fact that half, a good 7 or 8 chapters are behind a route split. But at the time, I didn't know that. I was like, maybe FE8 is one of the longer Fire Emblem games. I don't know. So when I got to the end of Lynn mode, I was kind of like, I mean, is that it? For a bit, I was like, is that legitimately the end of the story? Maybe this game is just with a standard that I could expect, or maybe it's a particularly short one. I don't know. Little did I know that I was in for another 20 chapters or so. Of course, you find out pretty easily because after Lynn mode is over, after the credits roll, a text box pops up and says, Lynn's story is over, but now Ellawood will become the story's main character. Kind of. We'll get there. After you have beaten Lynn mode, a couple different things can happen depending on your situation. So the first time you're playing the game, you're forced to complete Lynn normal mode, and then after Lynn normal mode, you are just thrust immediately into Ellawood normal mode. There's still the text box that pops up, but you don't get to choose Ellawood hard mode, and you certainly don't get to choose Hector mode. Hector mode is unlocked for the first time after you beat Ellawood's story. However, I am playing on a save file that has complete data for everything. So both Ellawood and Hector mode are unlocked, and Ellawood hard mode and Hector hard mode are both unlocked as well. Normally Hector hard mode you don't unlock until you beat the game a second time in Hector normal mode. But I can access it now. So I kind of thought about what to do about this, right? Because there are a few chapters in this game that I cannot just, I can't do the thing I did for FE5 and FE6 where I save state before the split and then play those maps and then reload and then go through the other route split, right? There are kind of route splits in this game, but they are very different than how they normally work. So for example, there's a character named or there's a map called what is it called, Pale Flower of Darkness, I believe is what it's called, and there are 2 different versions of that map, and the map that you go to, the version of that map you go to, depends on the experience of 8 different characters. It's kind of like in the Ilia Sake route split, but for completely unrelated characters. I think it's Sarah, Priscilla, Urk, and Lucius versus Dorcas, Bartray, Guy, and Raven. So it's like either manage completely like 8 completely different characters, and like make sure their experience doesn't get too far apart from each other, so that I can reload and within like a chapter or two, go to the other version by funneling exp into the other 4. And it's like, this is just such a hassle. So what I decided to do instead, and then of course there are certain chapters that are Hector mode exclusive. There is exactly one chapter, well, there's 2, but one of them is right at the start, so I could very easily load a save state for that one. But there is one other chapter very late into Eliwood mode that you do not play in Hector mode at all. So I would either have to like I don't even know what I would do for that. I would have to like get a different save file, or it I really tried to think about what I could do to not have to do this, but I really just kind of had to bite the bullet and say I'm going to have to play through this game twice. So that's what I did. I loaded a save. I created like copies of my ROM or whatever, my save file, and I have 2 ROMs now. One, they're all using the same, or they're both using the same Lin mode carryover data, so all the characters from Lin mode should be the same. But one of them is going to be through Eliwood normal mode, which is just like the easiest version of the game, just to really, blow through that one, since most of the content is going to be in Hector mode. I considered doing Hector normal mode because I don't think Hector hard mode is very fun, but I did eventually elect to do Hector hard mode. I thought it would be more interesting. If I'm going to be playing the game twice, I'd rather show off like an easy version and then like, the actual hard difficulty, relatively hard difficulty of Hector hard mode. So I'm going to be playing through the game twice. I have I have 2 different teams that I'm planning on using in both playthroughs. In fact, I might like I like to talk about the characters I'm using and how they're doing. But with all these characters and all these different chapters, I might not have the opportunity to do that. So I'm gonna try still, but I'm also gonna tell you the teams I'm using here right now because, first of all, I just think it's kind of fun, but also in case I don't ever like talk about some of these guys, you'll know kind of like in the background that that's who I'm using. So for the Eliwood mode playthrough, I'm going to be using, like when I say using, I mean like focusing on training and getting experience on them. The Eliwood mode playthrough is going to be going to the Lloyd version of Four Fanged Offense, which honestly probably not the best idea, but I have reasons that I'll maybe get to. And then the Jeremy version of Pale Flower of Darkness. And that team is going to be consistent of Lyn, Florina, Bartray, Lowen, Raven, Wrath, Nino, Dart, Marcus, and Legault. And yes, Marcus on Eliwood normal mode, I really just don't want to have to think about this one. This is the team. I'm going to be training these guys. I'm going to be, trying to promote them and everything. But really, the Eliwood playthrough is just going to be for cutscenes and going to be for experiencing those small handful of chapters that I can't experience elsewhere. So Marcus is I decided I'm just going to use Marcus. Marcus is going to be my win button. I don't want to have to think about this playthrough in the slightest. I'm probably still going to be using Marcus in Hector hard mode, obviously. I'm not that much of a masochist, but he's not going to be on my end game team, essentially, is what I mean. Okay, and then the Hector mode playthrough is going to be going to Linus version of Four Fang Offense and the Kenneth version of Pale Flower of Darkness. And that team is going to consist of Hector, Eliwood, Oswin, Farina, Sarah, Lucius, Geitz, Kent, Renault, and Canis. So, honestly, looking back at this team, not stellar, not the most amazing team for Hector hard mode, but I've played this game enough times where I'm not super worried, honestly. I've only played Hector hard mode once, actually, but I'll say this, honestly not that hard. This is a hot take. I've debated this with some of my Fire Emblem friends, so your mileage may vary, you might disagree with me. I honestly think that Hector hard mode is still probably easier than FE6 normal mode, at least for me. Like some people might say that's crazy, but I don't know, man. I feel like even the hardest parts of FE7 Hector hard mode are just boring and they just have a lot of they're just really tedious and take a long time, and require a little bit of forethought, and mostly just have a shitload of enemies. but Hector, like FE6 normal mode, like is not that hard either. But it does, it does throw some tough guys at you, and requires you to actually like, I don't know. At least in my experience, that's how I feel. And then not to say nothing of FE6 hard mode, obviously. But okay, yeah. So the reason I'm doing Linus in the Hector mode playthrough, you'd think it would be easier to just do Lloyd in that playthrough. Because in the Eluin mode playthrough, it's going to be a lot easier to feed my shitty lords. It's going to be really easier to feed Lyn and Eliwood, to get them enough levels to get to the Linus version of that map, because they need to be like a high level. Basically, I'll explain the details another time. But the reason that I wanted to do Linus in this mode is because I want to use Eliwood. And so essentially, when I sat down to like make my team for this and think about who I wanted to use this playthrough, I thought it would be really cool if I used a team of like all of the anima guys, because if you remember, my affinity is anima, because that is based on my real life birth month. My real life birth month is October, and if you pick October in the avatar creation, then your affinity is anima, and the anima guys get a bonus depending on how well you're doing. So I thought, okay, it would be really funny if I used like specifically those guys and made them like staples on my team. So then I went and looked and sat down and I was like, okay, who do I have to work with here? Eliwood, Kent, Renault, who is the very, very end of the game, and Farina, and Oswin, actually, also Oswin. So we got a few guys. I definitely don't have as many as like Fire or Thunder, but some of them only have like 2 or 3. I think I have 5 guys. So honestly, kind of a mixed bag there. I mean, one of them being Renault is just like so unlucky, because he's such a late game join. It's kind of crazy. Is Canis in there too? Actually, hold on. I'm gonna double check. All right, yeah. So Anima is Eliwood, Oswin, Renault, Canis, and Kent, and Farina. Okay, so I have 6 guys. That's pretty good. Light only has 4. Dark only has 3. Apparently Merlinus is dark. That's funny. But yeah, so I'm going to be using all those guys. And of course, if you know anything about this game, you know that Farina is a Hector mode exclusive character. So if I wanted to use this full anima team, it would have to be in Hector mode, which means that I have to use Eliwood in Hector mode, which means that just makes the most sense to have be my Linus playthrough, because I already have Lyn at a decent level from Lyn mode. I'm going to be using Eliwood, and I'm probably going to be using Hector also, just because like it's Hector mode and he's the main character, so I just like using him. But yeah, so very convoluted mental gymnastics to kind of justify that one, but I think you can kind of see where I'm coming from. I want to do something unique and interesting for pretty much all the playthroughs that I do for this podcast in terms of like who I decide to use. It doesn't have to be anything like crazy, even if it's just like, oh, I want to use characters that I never used before. Like, that's fine. That's kind of what I did for FE5. I used some characters that I never used before. FE6, I don't remember what I based FE6 around. But I know some games I'm going to be basing it around like the legendary weapons and things like that. So, we'll see how that plays out. But okay. So that's kind of my plan going forward for Eliwood and Hector mode. So every chapter or every episode, I'm going to be talking about both the Eliwood version of the map and the Hector mode version. Usually doesn't matter. There's some different enemy placements and stuff like that, some different items. But the main thing that's going to make a difference is the story, because in Eliwood mode, Eliwood is the POV character, and in Hector mode, Hector is the POV character. So you're getting 2 different scenes, you're getting 2 different experiences of the same story. So it really does just make sense to talk about them in more detail. But yeah, so we're going to start that next week, or next episode rather. And I have the list of episodes here. So next time we're going to be doing Chapter 11 Eliwood, Chapter 11 Hector, 12 13 and 13X are the chapters that we're going to be talking about in the next episode. So we're going right up to the Merlinus Gaiden map. So yeah, look forward to that. In terms of this time, though, the map gauntlet, oh god, none of them are good. None of these maps are good. I guess my favorite was probably Chapter 9, but that's not Like that's not saying anything. It's like we're out of the point of the game where they feel the need to teach you things. Like so some of the early like interesting elements of gameplay that they have there as like teaching tools are no longer there. At least not in any way that I could pick up on. Maybe I'm dumb and bad at game design. I don't know, but they're not quite at the point where they're actually good, interesting maps that are fun to play. So we're in this middle ground, right, where it's like I don't give a shit about any of these maps. Chapter 9 is probably my favorite, which is funny because it's a Fog of War map, but the Fog of War barely matters, and I just like, it's dealing with the reinforcements that pop out of the forts are kind of fun. But yeah, no, honestly, I think I'm sticking with Chapter 3. I think Chapter 3 is still my favorite. I don't know how long it's going to hold out. I really didn't think that it would hang like, I didn't think Chapter 3 would hang in there for this long. But it might be for it might be for another episode or two. I don't honestly know. Yeah, we'll see. The numbering is all going to be based on Hector mode. Like you can see, like on the list of chapters, one episode I'm going to be talking about chapter 29, and then I'm going to be going back and talking about 28 Eliwood because the numbering is different. So just don't worry about it. You guys will pick up on it, especially if you played this game. You'll know what I'm talking about, so it doesn't matter. All right, news. Nothing. No news has happened since last time. So we're not going to talk about anything. I am going to talk about something that I've been playing, though. In fact, I was actually playing this when I recorded the last episode, but I forgot to talk about it. And since then, I've actually beaten it. Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes. So Fire Emblem Warriors is a Musou style game. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but essentially, if you've ever heard of Dynasty Warriors, basically they're characterized, at least in from what I've seen, they're characterized by huge numbers of enemies, and then you play as like a couple of guys, and your couple of guys just like mows down waves and waves and waves of enemies with like cool combos and shit. It's pure spectacle. It's pure like beat 'em up, button mashing fun. There is some strategy you can do for sure, especially in some games where bosses are particularly tough or have like like armor gauges that you can break and then get like a special attack off. I think most Musou games that I've played have that kind of system. So figuring out how to rush that gauge down as quickly as possible can have some level of strategy. But generally speaking, at least in my experience, they are very much just like balls to the wall action and not much else, which is fine. I fucking love that. I love Musou games, and I love Fire Emblem Three Houses. So Fire Emblem Three Hopes, like the fact that I didn't play it at launch is like kind of crazy. Like the fact that it took me this long to get to this game was kind of crazy, and I had a great time. So really fun game. I really enjoyed it. I did not play the original Fire Emblem Warriors because I am a petty bitch who will never play that game because of how much they fucked up with like the marketing and all that stuff. Essentially, if you don't know any of the drama behind that, basically, Fire Emblem Warriors got announced. Everyone was really excited because it seemed like, if you've ever heard of Hyrule Warriors, which is the Zelda equivalent, that game is like a celebration of the entire Zelda franchise. Like every character you can think of that like is there's a few that I wish were in there. Like Groose from Skyward Sword is not in there. He really should have been. But like for the most part, you got characters from basically every Zelda game, especially every like 3D Zelda game, but then also some of the 2D ones even. Like it's in the DLC, they had like Marin in there, from Link's Awakening. Like they have some, so it's a really truly a celebration of the major highlights of that series. And so when Fire Emblem Warriors got announced, I was really excited, and I think a lot of people were really excited for the same thing. But it was not a celebration of the entire series. It was a celebration of Awakening, Fates, and Shadow Dragon. And I'm just still salty about that to this day. There was a whole shit about like, well, if we included all the protagonists from the whole series, then there would be too many swords. Too many characters would use swords. Which, first of all, that's not how the fucking Musou game formula works. It's not based on your weapon. It's based on, like every character has a unique moveset. Like, both Link and, what's another example? Who else fights with a sword in Hyrule Warriors? Someone has to fight with a sword, right? Maybe not, actually. No, what's her face? Impa in that game has a sword. They're both swords, technically they're very different swords, but they are both swords, and they have completely different movesets, because that's just like, you don't base it around the weapon, you base it on the character, or in the case of Three Hopes, you base it on the class. So that didn't hold up to any scrutiny. But even if you wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt on that, they also put in a bunch of OCs, or like a couple of OCs, that also use swords. So like, what the fuck? Generally, it was just very, it just felt very sloppy, and it felt like they had the opportunity to really make this a celebration of Fire Emblem at a time when it felt like, for the first time in a very long time, Fire Emblem was I'm going on this whole rant. You can skip to the end of the episode if you want. I'm basically done. But when Fire Emblem Warriors got announced, it was like, honestly, without a hint of exaggeration, one of like the best days of my life, which sounds ridiculous, but hear me out. So when I was really getting into the Fire Emblem series, it was around the time that Fates was relatively new, and it seemed like, with everything going on, they were really catering towards the newer games. And I, back then, still am to a certain extent, I was a big fan of the older games more than the newer games, and I was really not a fan of how they were kind of bastardizing the series and making it into this new direction that I really didn't like. Even though I didn't get into the series until the games were, in that era anyway, but, whatever. Then that direct came out, and I remember that direct very distinctly, because it is the same direct that they announced Shadows of Valentia, a remake of an old, unpopular Fire Emblem game. Fire Emblem Warriors, a crossover mobile game that was going to be having characters from the whole series, and Fire Emblem Warriors, which seemed like it was going to also be a crossover game for the whole series. So for the first time, I was like, wow, they actually give a shit about the older games, and they're going to be celebrating the older games in the same way that they're celebrating the newer ones. And to have that expectation kind of so blatantly like thrown back at me, like, no, fuck you. Only Fates, only Awakening, and only like the game with Marth in it, because Marth, like, I get that one. It makes sense for Marth to be in the game. We will include two characters, Lyn and Celica. It has nothing to do with the fact that Lyn is just like one of the only characters that's as popular as the newer game characters, and is also a hot girl. And Celica being the protagonist of a new and upcoming game at that time. I don't know. It just felt very like it was very obvious where their priorities were, and that even by itself didn't bother me. It was the way that they were trying to like justify it, which really got to me. So that's my soapbox about Fire Emblem Warriors. However, Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes does not have that problem. It focuses exclusively on one game, and it does genuinely feel like a celebration of that one game. With the different routes and stuff like that. I've only played one route. I played the Golden Deer route. Golden Wildfire is what it's called. It was a lot of fun. And I'm probably going to go back and play the other routes at some point as well. But yeah, overall, not anything. It felt like, they were really reimagining the Three Houses formula and fixing a lot of problems that I had with Three Houses in terms of the story and writing. So really big fan of that. Really good game. Would highly recommend if you like Musou games, if you like Three Houses, or both, like me, you're in for a good time. So give it a try. And then, I am playing another game, but I think I'm going to save that one to talk about for another time, partially because I went on for so goddamn long in this on that rant about Fire Emblem Warriors. So, deranged, unhinged rant over. You can go now. You're captive audience. You're no longer a captive audience. Tweet your answer to the question. What's your least favorite gameplay mechanic in the series? At IMAMeleeKirby or terminalpodcast@gmail.com. And I will see you next time as we discuss the beginning of Eliwood and Hector mode. All right. Yeah, that's all for me. So I hope you have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.